Starting with Anthony Albanese, whose tenure as opposition leader has been such a car crash that the most newsworthy part of it was his actual car crash in January, because at least it made an impact on one constituent. On Thursday, in order to finally be noticed, Albo showed up at his own press conference disguised as Barnaby Joyce to announce that, like Barnaby Joyce, he'd be screwing with his staff.
I will be holding another press conference later today to deal with issues relating to the reshuffle.
Well, opposition leader Anthony Albanese will today unveil his new look frontbench as the political year begins with his leadership in the spotlight.
Mark Butler to be dumped from the party's climate change and energy portfolios.
The opposition leader is trying to stem party infighting over emissions reductions.
So, Albo sacked Butler from the opposition climate change portfolio for being a little too opposed to climate change. Makes sense. The real reshuffle is how, in just over a decade, Labor has gone from calling climate change
the great moral challenge of our generation
to this.
Outspoken Labor MP Joel Fitzgibbon called for Mark Butler to be removed from the climate portfolio, claiming Mr Butler's more ambitious climate targets have alienated traditional blue-collar voters.
Strange, given that 4 out of 5 Aussies, no matter the colour of their collar, care about climate change. And I know Albo is pursuing a small target strategy, hence the small climate targets. I'm just saying don't be so small that the PM could take you as a suppository. With far-right groups such as the Proud Boys rising to infamy in the United States, intimidating crowds with their tactical body armour and low-cal alcoholic seltzers, on Friday, locals were shocked as the movement once again reared its ugly head in Victoria.
Residents of a Grampians town have been rattled by right-wing extremists who set fire to a cross and sung racist chants while camping over the Australia Day long weekend.
A chilling image. A group of men stand in front of a flaming cross, their faces covered.
It is a chilling image. If there's one thing this country won't stand for, it's the violation of a total fire ban.
38 members of the National Socialist Network went hiking in the Grampians over the Australia Day long weekend. Faces hidden, they pose with an Australian flag, performing the Nazi salute.
They're burning crosses, throwing Nazi salutes. I tell you, for people who hate immigrants, they sure are importing a lot of their hobbies. It took the hard-hitting team at the project to once again bring us the news done differently.
Of neo-Nazis.
Really differently.
So they'd heard them sort of yelling out white pride over and over, and then they were chanting Ku Klux Klan, and then white power, and then there was sort of these Hail Hitlers.
Yes, Hail Hitlers, the newly discovered weather phenomenon where frozen Führers fall from the sky. And it turns out our homegrown white supremacists had goose-stepped down this particular trail before.
One of them, Antipodean Resistance, was in the Grampians just a few years ago.
What a ringing endorsement for the area. I mean, Nazis only made it to Paris once, but they visited the Grampians twice. Hope they wrote a review on TripAdvisor.
Beautiful views, amazing scenery, perfect spot for a bit of mind camping.
Saturday began with Australian cricket team coach Justin Langer under fire after revelations that players were drained by his intensity and mood swings. Personally, I was just thrilled to hear the Australian team got something to swing this summer. But in response to critics who said the Australians weren't hungry enough, came this revelation that during the Brisbane Test, Langer had to tell a player to stop jamming toasted sandwiches in his pocket to eat on the field. I don't see what the problem is. What's he supposed to do if he gets hungry between the lunch break and the tea break? I mean, sure, there's the drinks break, but that's strictly fluids only. On Sunday, 2020's biggest fad finally made it to Perth as the world's most isolated city was told to isolate even more.
Millions of people in Western Australia stretching from Perth to the Margaret River are in the first hour of a 5-day snap lockdown. Authorities reacting decisively and with breakneck speed to the one case of coronavirus.
That positive result has come from a male hotel quarantine security guard in his 20s. It appears possible that this new positive case has the highly transmissible UK variant.
It's a breach that no one could have seen coming, except the AMA, which warned us 2 weeks ago that this exact thing was likely to happen. Also likely to happen, the obligatory panic buying of toilet paper.
COVID chaos at shopping centres just about everywhere.
Guys, it's a 5-day lockdown. Unless you're on a Metamucil IV, you don't need that much toilet paper. Though it is Perth, so maybe they're just worried about the shops closing early. What should give you the shits is that at the core of this outbreak is another story we've seen again and again.
We know the infected person is a hotel quarantine security guard. And then the revelation, he had a second job as an Uber driver, a breach of the state's tough COVID protocols.
Here's the thing, people don't take an illicit second job with Uber because they just love the thrill of the open road. They take insecure work because they need the money. So given the cost of lockdown, how about we think of quarantine security like buying a latte in Perth and just pay way too much for it? On Monday, disturbing news out of Queensland.
The Gold Coast has a new surfing star after a video went viral overseas.
No, that wasn't the wrong clip. I hate that duck. And not just because it's much better at surfing than me, it's because of this.
Duck the duck has taken to surfing much like its relatives take to water.
He just took to it like a duck to water.
This little fella has taken to surfing, well, like a duck to water.
No, Duck the Duck didn't take to it like a duck to water. He is a duck in water. It's not a simile if you're just saying the thing that it is. And he's not surfing, he's body surfing, or as ducks call it, swimming. Yeah, this is a duck surfing. And I don't mind saying he has taken to that like a duck to water. Moving on. And on Tuesday, Collingwood president and noticeably wet man Eddie Maguire refused to stand down after the release of a damning internal report.
Collingwood Football Club is guilty of systemic racism, according to a leaked report commissioned by the club itself.
The Do Better report was a shocking indictment of the culture of the Collingwood Football Club, but with Eddie in the hot seat, it wasn't a question of doing better, but more, how could he do any worse?
This is an historic and proud day for the Collingwood Football Club.
Come on, Eddie, it isn't even the most historic day of Collingwood racism. Far from apologetic, Eddie did his best to big up the club.
We're a club that tries to do well, and we make mistakes. We're a big church.
If I was addressing claims of systemic abuse, I might avoid comparing myself to the church. With such a heartbreaking story, it's hard to know how to sum it up. Cue 9 News, who decided to slowly zoom in on the saddest magpie they could find.
The irony of systemic racism inside a club famous for the black and white.
And our lawyers have said to say that that magpie is not racist. Finally, we couldn't finish the week without pouring one out for one of Australia's longest-lasting pollies.
Federal Parliament's longest-serving MP, Kevin Andrews, has lost his pre-selection battle for the seat of Menzies.
Victorian MP Kevin Andrews had the backing of Scott Morrison, Tony Abbott and John Howard, but has been ousted by newcomer and former SAS commando Keith Wallahan.
Wallahan won in a landslide, beating a 30-year incumbent, although in fairness to Kev, the public image of the SAS is at an all-time high. So it's only right that we at The Weekly say farewell to Kevin Andrews. Kevin Andrews.
Kevin Andrews shot to fame when he introduced legislation against voluntary assisted dying and was rewarded by John Howard, who made him Minister for Ageing, presumably for his determination to keep Aussies ageing whether they wanted to or not. Andrews then started a wildly unsuccessful national campaign to lower divorce rates, hoping a $200 voucher was enough reason to stay in a loveless marriage. He even threw in this highly erotic Minister for Love photo shoot as an aphrodisiac. Sadly, that couch had to be burned. Kev then became the Police Minister for Love when he voiced his opposition to marriage equality.
I have an affectionate relationship with my cycling mates who we go cycling on the weekends, but that's not marriage.
And he was right. That's not marriage. But his moral high point came in 2007 when he said, "Some groups don't seem to be settling in and adjusting into the Australian way of life as quickly as we would hope," in response to the fatal bashing of a 19-year-old African Australian by 2 racists. Which sounds horrible, because it is. Farewell, Kev, or should I say, on your bike.
And that's the week.